You know, it's actually rare for me to full-on hate someone in society. Obviously, you have the people that are universally hated by everyone, such as the infamous World War II leader with a mustache, which I won't be saying his name because I'll get demonetized. Or maybe someone like Amy Schumer. But overall, I just really don't truly hate a lot of people. It's just kind of hard for me because I'm a good, kind-hearted person that only likes you if you agree with everything I say. But there are rare circumstances of groups of people I specifically do hate, such as people who don't sneeze into their elbow, people who run a stan account on Twitter, and people who say they were quote-unquote born in the wrong generation. Now, no matter how much time has passed, there's always been people who say they were born in the wrong generation. I literally did research for this video and found Reddit posts 10 years old of people complaining about people saying this. There are YouTube videos 5+ years old of people complaining about this. Shit, even Filthy Frank made a video on it. I didn't even know that until I was writing the script for this video. And just like clockwork, it's now reached the new generation of kids on TikTok. On TikTok, there's always these kids posting something called nostalgia compilations. It'll be like high school footage from the 80s and 90s, some pictures of things they had in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like pet rocks and I don't know, these bands, I guess, and footage of old music back then as well. Then everyone in the TikTok comment section is always saying the same thing. Dear God, these people just don't understand me like how they would understand me. I was truly born in the wrong generation. So in this video, I just kind of want to explain to these kids that still say this thing. It's always these 14-year-old kids that just got their first look at things from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Maybe they just watched Stranger Things and thought life was perfect back then. That no, you were not born in the wrong generation. And let's start off with the most obvious thing that people tend to forget when saying this. Technology. There's no doubt that technology has changed ways insanely in the past 50 years. I mean, we went from this dumbass game where the whole point was to hit a single pixel into another. I mean, seriously, who thought of this boring ass idea? To things that were actually fun 50 years later, like anime VR foot massage simulator. My point is that we rely on technology way too much for any of you to survive back then. Especially anyone in Gen Z who was saying this. These kids always say that they were born in the wrong generation when watching these nostalgia compilations while texting on the newest iPhone 14 Pro Max. Well, guess what, kids? Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they didn't even have phones that could text. Back then, they were still using landline phones. And just for you kids to know, that's the little phones with the wires in them. And the closest thing you could get to a wireless phone was one of these brick-ass looking devices that gave you cancer, which only had one function and it was calling. So unless if you want to actively travel back in time and not use your new iPhones and use those brick-ass phones that only had one function and give you cancer, then you don't want to live back then. I mean, having a smartphone nowadays is such a major privilege. You can literally do anything on your phone. On one singular device, you can do all of the following. Search any piece of information for free. Call family and friends. Text family and friends. Record videos in HD. Send a post out for every 8.8 billion people in the world to potentially see. Play 3D realistic games. And watch TV shows and movies. Bruh, like, come on, this is the future. But you're telling me you would give that up and live back then to quote-unquote experience it? Yeah, no, be honest with yourself, please. Who would ever give up the type of privileges we have now? Like, I don't even think our parents would. And the way our generation is glued to phones and technology, I just know none of y'all would survive a week if you were sent back in time. Almost every person I know in Gen Z can't spend at least a day not using their phone. In fact, half of y'all can't even spend the next 10 minutes without picking up your phone and scrolling on TikTok. Like, our attention span is so messed up for us to even go back in time. Our attention span is so bad that I guarantee half the people watching this won't even finish the video. And you're telling me that you want to be sent back in time to the generation where they didn't have it? But you know what? It's not just that. You also have to include every other piece of modern technology nowadays. No internet, no laptops, no computers, no modern consoles, and no modern HD TV. Yeah, you would be begging to be sent to the future again in the next 10 minutes. And I just want to clear something up for the rest of this video. I'm not hating on anyone who had to experience these type of things. I just honestly need to compare for some of these dumbass kids that don't understand the privileges we have. Like, y'all really got me lecturing y'all like I'm a parent. But I guarantee if those kids in the 70s, 80s, and 90s saw the type of shit we have now in technology, they would be sobbing and begging on their knees to be sent into the future. Also, technology has made communication with anyone you can relate to much easier. Back then, if you were a little weird and didn't fit with everyone, you were pretty much screwed. Everyone would just openly laugh at you and bully you for whatever it was. But now with modern technology and the internet, you can find nearly anyone that relates to you. For example, let's say you're into a certain niche music scene. There's a community for that. Maybe you're into a specific game that's not too popular. There's a community for that. They did not have this type of privilege back then. You were just spawned in the world next to people around you and had to deal with them. If you didn't like the people around you, you just had to deal with them. If the people around you didn't like the same shit as you were an outcast and bullied. And as much as we complain about social media and how it is, I'm not saying social media is perfect or anything. We obviously have our flaws, but it also really does help extremely in this aspect. There are so many different communities on so many different platforms. One platform might only have the community you're looking for, while another one doesn't. Then we can't forget about the holy grail where you're even watching this video on YouTube. If you're ever feeling down or not good, watching your favorite YouTuber is the best way to change your mood. Back then, the only media you could really watch was what the TV was specifically playing at that time, or you had to go out and buy more videos of whatever it was you liked. And you know what, speaking of videos, you had to buy every type of video you wanted in stores back then, which I can't forget about this point. That also includes the videos like corn videos. We are so blessed with the amount of access we have to watch any of these type of videos. You have every single type of website in the book to get your nut on. In the touch of a button, I can see hundreds of pages for whatever I want. But back then, the only way to access any type of adult material was from buying videos straight from the store or buying magazines straight from the store. There's no way you just weren't getting caught. If you wanted to watch a video, then you would probably have to do it in front of everybody on the living room TV. I mean, most households had like one TV at most back then. And can you imagine one day you're just trying to get your quick nut off, you all of a sudden forget that the videotape is still left in the VCR. Then your parents come in later on that day and get ready to watch a movie. Open the VCR to put the movie in, only to see quote unquote big booty Puerto Rican girl takes it from big black cock. That is absolutely something you cannot outlive. Or if you used the alternative, which was magazines, then you would have to hide it in some magical compartment in your house. So let's compare things to how it is nowadays. Right now with modern technology, you can just pull up a little incognito tab, search up whatever you're feeling, get your dirty off, then close the tab and move on with your day like it never happened. I mean, seriously, that's convenience at its finest. I just can't imagine living in a world without the incognito tab anymore. Can you? Do you really want to live in a world without an incognito tab? Exactly. I think the next thing we have to talk about is a little something called history. Now, before I say this point, I know our world is not completely shunned away from violence. I mean, there still is an entire war going on in the Ukraine that everyone just kind of forgot. I don't know why. But we are at 100 times more peace compared to how it was back then. I swear, there were so many countries fighting over war back then for some reason. Everyone was living in constant fear that they were going to be bombed by another country. And don't forget that they drafted kids straight out of high school to fight in the war. I couldn't imagine being in class one day learning the Pythagorean theorem to the next day fighting in a battlefield and seeing people's heads getting blown off in front of my face. But you know what? They had good music. It's all good. They had good music, right? My point is that we are lucky enough in our generation that we don't have to live in constant fear of this. I mean, every now and then you do have your typical threat from Russia or North Korea or some shit, saying they're gonna wreak havoc on us or send a devastating attack, but them niggas never do it anyways. I've heard about 10 times in the last year something was gonna happen, and it ain't happened yet. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not trying to jinx it either, but if something was gonna happen, wouldn't it happen already? Like what is going on? But back then, when countries threatened other countries, there was about a 99% chance they would actually slide and do the action. So you would actually have to fear the chance of a war happening. And if you were a guy back then, you had to prepare to play IRL Call of Duty. So to those kids that say they were quote-unquote born in the wrong generation, if you want to live in constant fear of dying to another country, then by all means, go ahead and travel back in time. I'll stay put here. And I think the next thing we have to bring up that's pretty obvious is inclusion. Nowadays, life has gotten easier for anyone that has anything, and that's because inclusion. No one is left out of something just because of what they are anymore. But oh boy, was it not even close to how inclusive it is in our generation back then. Like back then, if you were black, for example, you couldn't even walk down the street without being at risk of someone openly shouting the N-word at you, or just being racist to you and making it as obvious as they can. Because, you know, it's the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Segregation sort of just ended for them. This whole being a not racist thing is kind of new to them. They gotta adapt. And what are you gonna do? Cancel them for saying it? Imagine telling a bunch of racist people back then that they would be canceled for saying the word. They were just gonna look at you with a very confused look, then proceed to beat the living out of you. Like, also, if you're a girl from our generation, you definitely don't want to live back then. This is a time back before any Me Too movements happened. I know y'all like to complain about men now all the time, but men back then? Whew, yeah, they got nothing on us. First off, most of the time, women were housewives to men because that was the only thing they could do. A lot of jobs sort of didn't hire women because they were sort of a little bit sexist, you know? There was no hashtag independent queen boss slay shit going on back then. Then men would come back from war with severe PTSD and take it out on their wives, beating and breaking every single fibral bone in their body. But you know, they got good music, right? I mean, just look at this 80s high school footage. So honestly, I think you'll fit great and won't be discriminated in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Of course, that's as long as you're not black, not Asian, not Hispanic, not gay, not a woman, not disabled, and more. And those are just to name a few. But if you are any of those things, let's just say it's not going to be the best time for you. Prepare to be discriminated in some type of way. And the next thing we also need to bring up nowadays is modern medicine. Now, I'm not here to say they didn't have modern medicine back then. I mean, far Far from it. They obviously had really good treatments and whatnot. Like when Coke put cocaine in their drinks, for example, that was pretty far. But compared to what we have in the 21st century, is a different realm of medicine. We're reaching points of medicine treatments that have never been seen. For nearly anything you suffer now, there's a treatment for it. It's just known that the more society advances, the better medicine we get. And even shit like over-the-counter medicine. They be having treatments for any type of ailments you have. You got a stuffy nose? Take this. You got a bruised ankle? Take this. You got some constipation? Shove this up your ass. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the doctors back then were kind of stupid. Like, y'all remember when they openly advertised cigarettes everywhere? And doctors would be in the advertisement saying it's okay to smoke cigarettes in the 50s? It still boggles me to this day how doctors were so stupid that they couldn't tell the bad effects of cigarettes. I mean, even I could tell, and I'm not a doctor. When you walk past someone smoking a cigarette, your lungs kind of just halt. And you're gonna tell me right now that they didn't notice it? No. They can't be trusted. I'm not trusting these people with my health. It's not worth whatever they offered in life back then. So if I was to bet on a generation of doctors to save my life, honestly, really thinking about it now, I wouldn't trust either. Like, how am I supposed to trust these stupid old heads or Gen Z with my life? But if I did really have to pick one, I'd for sure pick our generation. And the next thing we have to bring up is convenience. Convenience is one of the biggest leisures in life to have. We are convenient with nearly everything we have in our generation. Like, you can pretty much do anything from home now. Do you want to work from home now? You can do that. You want to go to school from home now? You can do that. If you want to get food but don't want to drive to the place, you can do that. If you want to watch movie and TV shows but don't want to go to the theater or buy DVDs, you can do that. If you go back even like 20 years, almost none of that stuff was possible. Also, we can't forget about the convenience of shipping as well. Now, as much as I don't like that egg-headed looking ass nigga Jeff Bezos, he kind of gave us prime shipping. I have to love him for that. You can get anything delivered to you within 2 days now. And it's not just prime shipping, like it's nearly from anywhere. If you want to order a specific thing from anywhere nowadays, you typically get it at the latest in a week. But comparing it to how bad shipping was back then, first off, you had to call a number to even place your order for anything. Then you had to give all of your information on the phone. And also, there was no guarantee that you was finna get what you ordered. I can only imagine how easy it was to scam people with fake things back then. But the main part is the shipping. I know damn well that it took centuries to even get what you ordered. Now, the earliest we can get our orders is 2 days or even the same day sometimes. Back then, you were lucky if you even got your shit in a week at the earliest. Like, they had turtles moving packages back in the good old days. You would get your stuff in like 2 to 4 weeks normally. If it takes that long for an order now, we just request a refund because ain't no one got that much patience. So good luck trying to order that specific shampoo and conditioner you like that's not in stores when it runs out. It'll be there in 2 to 4 weeks, so you're just gonna have to rock with using water only. And before I end this video, I'm just gonna make one more point. We can just call this point straight up by its name. Serial killers. Do you know how many serial killers there were in the 20th century? They were just running rampant in the towns of every street. Like, I don't know what was up with the amount of serial killers from the 20s to the 90s. Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Charles Manson, Ed Gein, and the Zodiac Killer, just to name a few. Bruh, you were at risk of just being killed by one of them alone. And the worst part is, a lot of them acted like normal people. It was proven that someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, for example, was normal to the people around him. Also, if you got killed and were anything but white, you can bet that the police would not care. That case is getting copied into the garbage can once they see the victim is black. But nowadays, we really don't have to worry about that. If you do a crime now, it's almost guaranteed that you're gonna get caught. DNA testing has made it nearly impossible for anyone to not get caught. We also have cameras on nearly any corner of the world for your face to be seen. But back when they didn't have DNA testing, these serial killers could pretty much do whatever they want. I'd rather live in a generation where I don't have to worry about being hunted and killed by serial killers all the time. Like, why do you think it's so rare to ever see a serial killer now? Because they know they're gonna get caught. So in conclusion of this video, you weren't born in the wrong generation. You might like things from older generations, such as their music or fashion, but that doesn't mean you just magically fit in with them if you went back in time. If anything, you would be the weirdo that no one would understand. I think people think this just because it's easier to look back at old things and see how good it looked and not look at the bad. Like, I can imagine kids from the 80s looking back at the 20s and thinking they're born in the wrong generation as well. Can you imagine this happening in the future? You know how annoyed I'm going to be if kids in the future look back at our generation and say this shit as well? Posting nostalgia compilations of 2022 with the corn kid and period girl. I'm just gonna give up on life at that point. Anyways, you already know what to do. Follow my Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. As always, I love you guys consensually. And until next time, I'm out.